Green, and we're the co-presidents of Hillel at NYU.
My name is Annie Peck, and on behalf of the Bronfman Center, I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's event, Media, Morality, and Modern Times. Tonight's panel discussion, featuring Mayor Cory Booker, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, Michael Steinhardt, and Lori Cantillo, will feature discussions with issues that most of us face on a daily basis. An increasingly invasive media, oftentimes conflicting personal morality and modern culture, and a rapidly evolving society are just some of the issues that we will get to hear about tonight. I can't think of a more knowledgeable panel to share their insight with these topics with you. Tonight's event would not be possible without the generous help of our co-sponsors. I'd like to take a minute to thank the Bronfman Center for Jewish Student Life at NYU, Hillel at NYU, NYU's Undergraduate Law Society, the NYU College Democrats, the Sharp Lecture Series, Columbia Barnard Hillel, This World, the Values Network, and the Selma Rubin Distinguished Lecture Series.
The Selma Rubin Distinguished Lecture Series seeks to engage the entire NYU student body on some of the most complex and meaningful issues facing the world today by inviting them to hear from some of the world's most notable speakers. Past events supported by this lecture series have included a talk by Paul Rusesabagina, Rwandan hero and inspiration for the film Hotel Rwanda in 2006, which was an event attended by over 1,000 people. This series was created in honor of Lenore Rubin's mother, Selma, who had a strong will to find truth in the world and to spread justice to all. We want to extend our sincerest gratitude to Lenore Rubin for her continuous commitment to dialogue and education and her continuous support to extraordinary events such as this one. Please join me in applauding Lenore.
It is now our privilege to introduce Rabbi Yehuda Sarna, who will be moderating this evening's discussion. Rabbi Sarna is the rabbi at the Bronfman Center and a university chaplain at NYU. In 2008, he was awarded the Richard M. Joel Exemplar of Excellence by Hillel International, and in 2009, he was named one of the 36 under 36 changemakers by the Jewish Week. With the unique combination of dynamism, thoughtfulness, and devotion, Rabbi Sarna has truly been a tremendous asset to the NYU community and beyond. So without further ado, Rabbi Sarna.
Well, we have a great panel for you tonight. I'd like to introduce our panelists one by one. First, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, one of the world's leading relationship experts on values and spirituality. He is the host of the award-winning national TV show Shalom in the Home on the Learning Channel, and the international best-selling author of 25 books, including most recently, Inspiration and Learning from Our Children, Honoring the Child's Spirit, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. I'd also like to welcome Lori Cantillo. Lori is the radio programmer and program director of 77 WABC in New York, the #1 talk radio station in the country. Lori is a parent as well as an accomplished author, having written the best-selling book entitled Right Brain Children in a Left Brain World by Simon & Schuster. Lori. The Honorable Cory Booker took the oath of office as mayor of New Jersey's largest city on July 1st, 2006. A champion and advocate for education reform for the children of Newark. This vision and passion for improving education for Newark children has led to the largest unprecedented partnership with Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg. The Honorable Cory Booker. And lastly, I'd like to welcome Michael Steinhardt, a legendary money manager turned philanthropist who is dedicated to creating a renaissance in American Jewish life. The co-founder of Birthright Israel, he continues to be a major supporter to this day, Mr. Michael Steinhardt. The theme of tonight's discussion will be media, morality, and modern times. It seems that the rate of change in media, the innovation of social networking, really has implications in many, many ways for the way we're thinking about values and the good of public society. Tonight, we're going to hear about how this is implied in different areas of our lives: family values, public discourse, civil discourse, and education. I'd like to start with Rabbi Boteach posing to you a question. Much of what's being discussed is the culture of exhibitionism that is induced to a certain extent by social networking. It seems like nowadays everybody has a profile. The tagline of YouTube is broadcast yourself. What kind of impact does this have on the way people think about themselves? What is the role of fame? Some people are becoming instantaneously famous. Is it possible to be famous and moral?
Famous and?
Moral.
I personally, Rabbi Sarna, take offense at having been asked that question first, since I have never engaged in self-promotion. I know nothing about the subject. I've always exhibited what I call an aggressive humility. But a very important question, and I did not know the questions before, so I want everyone to know that. So just before I answer it, I want to say one thing as someone who helped to organize this evening. Rabbi Yehuda Sarna is one of the country's most effective campus rabbis. We're very honored to have you as a moderator. Truly, second time we've done something together. I hope to do this. Just forgive me, I just welcome some of my friends. It'll be very brief. I want you all to know with all my heart, Michael Steinhardt, who's on my extreme left, is one of the greatest men that I have, well, as far as, I'm so right-wing that everyone's to my left, Corey? Okay. Michael Steinhardt is one of the greatest men that I have ever encountered in my life. I rarely say that about people. I would probably number the amount of people who I have met who I consider great on one hand. That was the time that I looked at myself in the mirror, that was one. But truly, Michael is a man of immense compassion, philanthropy, and he's very busy, and I'm very honored that he's accepted our invitation. And for the 250,000 Jewish kids who got a free trip to Israel to discover their heritage, that was his brainchild. It's the most successful Jewish educational plan in world Jewish history, and it's all to his credit.
An exhibitionist of exaggeration. He is a hero of hyperbole. And so most of the things you hear tonight, please discount them 75%, with the exception of his comments about Michael Steinhardt.
Okay. Next is Corey Booker. Ladies and gentlemen, Corey.
You just answer the question. Everybody does not need a master's.
I love you too, Corey, and Laura Cantillo, who was my producer.
Now, Shabbat dinners are supposed to be nice. I Shabbat at Shmuli's house about once a month. I try, and they're supposed to be family nights, peaceful nights. But Shmuli has the first ever in Jewish history full combat Shabbats, because the arguments are so intense, and eventually they degenerate into food fights. So this might be kind of, it's good that you're between the two of us.
I was going to say, I don't think I got the best seating.
Shmuli is long on most of this argument. I'm surprised that this, if you organize this, I'm surprised the subject matter is not sex somehow.
He just said exhibitionism before he said this. What do you think he was talking about?
Let's get to it. Let's answer the question. Let's mix it up.
I think that there is a difference between attention, Rabbi Sarna, and love. Love is something you're given unconditionally for something you are. You're someone's child, you're someone's friend, you're someone's sibling. Attention is something given very conditionally for a talent you have. You can sing on American Idol. you can dance as some great rock star. You get into Harvard. What we have today among the youth is attention rather than love. They're trying so hard to be the center of someone else's attention. And I think it's magnifying their insecurities. It's not like people are feeling better about themselves. They're feeling more and more insecure. My God, yesterday's New York Times had a massive story about the explosion of anorexia in the Orthodox Jewish community. That was in the New York Times. Because all this exhibitionism, even on the part of girls, is not making them feel better about their bodies. It's making them feel much more insecure about their bodies. Love, however, is what we really need. So, of course, you can be an attention seeker, and exhibitionism is still be moral. To be moral is to try to do the right thing, even if you're insecure and you need people to focus on you. I'm not speaking about myself now. But you can't be healthy. You can't be fully healthy and be an attention seeker. That's why I think we parents need to start giving our kids not attention. We have to stop telling them, you got a B, you could have gotten an A. You know, we have to stop making our kids into these trained monkeys designed to impress teachers and take great tests and get into Ivy League universities. I'm at NYU, right? You guys are proud to be here, right? But if we continue to make people feel that they're not human beings and they're inadequate in their being and they have to be human doings, always trying to exert effort to draw attention, we're going to continue to magnify the overarching insecurities of the American public.
Now, Lori, you wrote a book, a widely acclaimed book, about the way new media is affecting the way kids are thinking nowadays. What can you tell us about that?
It's happening faster than we know, and what's happening is it's shifting our brains more from the left side, the more literary side, to the right side, which is much more visual. That's television, that's computers, that's YouTube. And what we're finding is ADD is almost becoming the new normal. And this is why we're seeing such an explosion to the far right, again, of the left to right brain continuum of Asperger's and autism. People are saying, is it something in the water? Is it genetic? No, it's the way that we consume media. The human brain is very plastic, very malleable, and it's affecting education. So now we see teachers, after kids have been watching Sesame Street and the rapid fire images and they're on computers. My little guy was on a computer once and he had his thumb in one mouth and the other hand was on the mouse, and I'm thinking, you know, as long as from an early age these kids are consuming media in this regard, and it's no wonder when they hit a classroom and a teacher is giving a lecture at a chalkboard, in many instances, the kids are bored out of their minds and the teachers say, we can't control them, we have to give them Ritalin to contain this. The more enlightened schools are starting to adapt now to more visual methods of teaching, like smart boards and computers and so forth. But this is something that we're going to be addressing in a follow-up book, and it's really a right-brain explosion that's happening, and I can't say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I can say that we need to address it quickly.
So the right brain, the switch to the right brain, you're not sure whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. ADD, Asperger's, these seem like...
Well, those are the extreme conditions. What we're seeing, though, is think of right brain people that perhaps didn't do so well in school, dyslexia. These are some of the greatest thinkers of our time. Because I told my good friend Rabbi Shmuley that he's the poster child for ADD. His brain is always going 100 miles an hour. There are tangents upon tangents upon tangents. And it's not necessarily a bad thing because these are creative, intuitive, holistic thinkers, not necessarily good at people at following the rules or coloring in between the lines or having perfect penmanship. So there are pluses and minuses, absolutely, to the far right. Asperger's and autism are serious conditions.
Now, Mayor Booker, you've been involved in the project of education.
Hold on, I need to send out a tweet. Just give me a second.
You've been brought on to partner with you on education reform, arguably the major figure in social networking. What's your reaction to Lori's comments? Is the kind of the preponderance of new media, social networking, is this good for kids?
I've not done any research. What I do know is this next generation coming up has been gifted a set of tools by which to use and apply their creativity, their imagination, to do things that my parents' generation couldn't imagine before. People think we celebrate Martin Luther King and his extraordinary contributions. If you look at 8 May of 1963, in April of that month, he couldn't get people organized. It wasn't until the national media came in when Dorothy Bell and James Bell and Dorothy Cotton and others organized kids to create sort of a unique spectacle. The nation's media came down and captured what they were doing. And next thing you knew, thousands of people were coming down to join this revolution going on in Birmingham. Imagine if they had a different set of tools to connect people to that great revolution against white supremacy in our nation and for equality and justice. So here I see a generation of Americans that are coming of age at a time that they have a new platform where we're not dependent upon traditional medias, ABC, CBS, etc. That we now actually become syndicators of our own content. And to me, this is incredibly exciting now. Just like all platforms, radio, TV, which are neutral, they could go into the profane very easily. And we see that with, I have friends that are going to Google and they're showing Google searches that were going on all over the globe. I mean, it's really ridiculous what the most things we search for. But the flip side of that, just like human beings, all of us, we have that profane side that we could get drawn into, but we also have the most glorious, beautiful, spiritual sides that are being expressed as well. And so what I see people doing with the Facebook platform alone is incredible, and organizing and aggregating just by one of the this incredible new some people might play things like Farmville. How many people here know what I'm talking about when I say Farmville? So you see a lot of the younger people in this room raising their hands.
How much time do you have to play Farmville?
I actually don't play Farmville. Why Farmville brought my attention was because how many people know when I say sweet seeds, what are sweet seeds? Millions of sweet seeds were sold. These were things you could buy, virtual products you could buy in Farmville that brought millions of dollars to Haiti to what's going on. And so for me right now, I'm using my birthday through a social media platform or a company called Causes, which is extraordinary. We've raised thousands and thousands of dollars because there's a horrible instance of animal cruelty in Newark, and we're raising money to do something about this. So this connectivity is what society is about. King said when he was in that jail cell in April before the Birmingham Revolution, he said that we're all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a common garment of destiny. To me, what these platforms are doing is giving us, in the virtual sphere, a way to knit together our society in stronger ways, create connectivities where we've lost that. The last generation, my parents' generation, in many ways, this was the time where bowling alone, where you come home in your box, enter into another box, stay within your house. Now we're breaking down these walls of society where issues of race, issues of class, issues of religion, in many ways become more perforated and allow us to reach beyond these lines that used to divide us to begin to understand, in my opinion, our common humanity. Humanity, unfortunately, does have the profane as well as the profound. And so I agree with Shmuly. Look, celebrity and popularity is a commodity in many ways, and people specialize. What's the next spectacle I can do? To raise money for cancer or forming support groups for anorexia. I mean, there's amazing things happen that are just inspiring to the spirit, that people that would not have found each other. In fact, in many ways, find that kind of substantive connection through these social media platforms. Before, we were much more isolated and separated from each other, and you were living in communities where everybody looks like you, prays like you, has your same socioeconomic status. And now, I have people in the city of Newark, New Jersey that are making money on eBay, people in Newark, New Jersey that are connecting with people across the globe around issues that compel and excite them. And ultimately, this is a democratization that is going to be revolutionary. I mean, the fact that, as a politician, just use my profession, I used to have to be completely dependent upon these organized media oligarchy to get my message out. Now, on Twitter, I've got over 1 million followers. That's as many people as read the print edition of my state's largest newspaper. And so I can now, don't have to go through anybody. I can get my real, authentic voice. And so that's a very
As long as it's 140 characters.
As long as it's 140 characters. But frankly, even if it's not, we put up video content every day. We put up a video today of working with many mothers to get them connected, expecting mothers to get them connected to health information, a big baby shower for many women in our city that don't get a chance to have a baby shower like we know it. It was a beautiful event, and now people around the country retweet me saying that video. One person not from Newark said, I was in a really bad mood until I saw this and I was inspired. So in the same way that darkness often could consume light, when you have a connection like that, you can ignite lights like stars in the night. They could fill up the sky and be contagious in many ways with their brilliance.
Now, Mayor Booker, you're talking about the breaking down of boundaries that's happening to a certain extent between races, religions. Mr. Steinhardt, I was wondering if you could comment on what kind of impact you think this is having on Jewish Renaissance. Is it possible? I mean, we were speaking earlier about Jewish values. What are the authentic Jewish values for this generation? Do you think in order to ensure continuity, there has to be some kind of communal boundary set up, or is the permeable boundary okay?
Well, I think the ability to create boundaries is just that much more difficult today. And in some sense, the idea that boundaries have historically been artificial is clearer today. The fact that there's an overwhelming increase, say, in interracial marriages, I would say is something good. And that boundary, which historically has been at one point very strong, has weakened, and that's good. But on the other hand, there are other boundaries that are not as clear, but are in some sense more profound today. The differences between rich and poor are stronger today than they've been in an awful long time. That's not a boundary that you can articulate as clearly as racial boundaries. So I sense that Corey, as he articulates, is an optimist. But it's just as easy to be a pessimist. Look at what's happening in the Middle East. The Middle East is, after decades and decades of efforts and vast amounts of money going into certain places like Egypt, is in horrible, horrible shape, where whatever has happened and whatever efforts have been made, they have failed by almost any human measure. So, hard to say. And in Jewish terms, that's a whole different story. We have to start with the fact that we represent 0.2% of the world's population. And it seems to me that unless we begin to redefine who we are and what we stand for, we will diminish, except perhaps for that portion of us who are more rigid in our understanding of what it means to be Jewish, i.e. the traditional or the Orthodox. So for the rest of us, the non-Orthodox, using terms like Jewish values just doesn't cut it anymore, because what we define as Jewish values are really not Jewish values. They're Judeo-Christian values. And Judeo-Christian values allow us to comfortably assimilate and integrate into American society and ultimately disappear. And broadly speaking, that is what's happening, for good or for bad. Most Jews would say for bad, but that's something that we each have to think about. But in the last, well, I should step back and say that I've spent the last 16 years thinking about this, and Birthright was an effort, is an effort, to create a sense of identity in the non-Orthodox diaspora, and to show young Jews who were unfortunately the subject of a terrible experience called American Jewish education, that there's something a lot better about being Jewish than that which most of them come to know.
So, Mr. Steiner, so you're saying that reinforcing Jewish identity is a good thing?
I believe it is a good thing because I believe that the Jewish values as I know them represent the best form of values existent on this planet.
Wow. Well, if I can just jump in on that. That's a bold statement. Okay, I want to go in order. First of all, Corey, you're absolutely right. That
Hold on, say that again, please. I've never heard that actually coming out of your mouth. I'm absolutely right.
You're absolutely right in extolling how I'm right and you're wrong. You're absolutely right that social media connects people like never before. But you see, I think King himself once said, it wasn't the speeches that changed America's racist laws into a society of equality. It was the marches. It was bold, courageous action. It was kids prepared to brave fire hoses and Bull Connor's dogs. And this is especially relevant today. Today's April 12th, 2011, exactly 150 years to the day of the start of the Civil War, and we're sitting here in a room where Abraham Lincoln gained his national reputation, where he delivered the Cooper Union speech, which is why his picture is right up there. So this is phenomenal that we're all here together in this history. Lincoln's courage, Martin Luther King's courage. I totally agree with you that social media can spread the message, but I also fear that it serves as an excuse for some people not to be sufficiently active. I'm seeing tons of kids wasting away in front of a computer screen. I'm seeing men and women dating virtually. I believe that the healthy thing is balance in all things, as Aristotle said, as Maimonides said. And there's a lot of people who've been through JDate. There's a lot of people who've been through Match.com. But there's a lot of people who become dating addicts because for every one person they think they can date, looking at an internet dating site, there's 3 million people. And the options are endless. So I think balance really has to be brought to bear, especially once all of you become parents. When you see your kids becoming addicts to this stuff, it's really not healthy. The second thing is...
let me just take issue with that, because you're proving my point. My point is that first and foremost, that the King March in May of '63, if it wasn't for the media there that captured it, people from Joan Baez to Dick Gregory and others would not have swarmed on Birmingham. In many ways, it gave a portal for people to better understand what was happening and what was going on. So I agree with you. There's significantly problematic aspects of digital media now that are very bad. But on the flip side of that, I think it is incredible that now a large percentage of relationships in America are people who are meeting online and marrying online.
True, but
a lot of my friends have met through Match and through JDate.
Now, I heard it's easier to meet at a reception at Mr. Steinhardt's house.
Yeah.
Well, that's a rumor, and it's apparently Mr. Steinhardt, it's 70 shidduchim that you've set up. Is that right?
None of which are mine.
No, that's because if you meet in Michael's Zoo in Westchester, you meet amidst all these mating things going on with all the animals, and the atmosphere just becomes a little bit too amorous, so it's sort of in the air. But I hear you, Corey, but I'm just saying, technology has to be a means to an end, and I know some people...
But how is that different?
but
People, look, King said, and it's true here, that we will have to repent in our day and age, not for the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. That was very true in the 1960s. There were too many people who thought our democracy was a spectator sport. It's the same thing true now. You're right, there are too many people who are sitting at their computer screen on the sidelines viewing the world, not realizing they have to get into the game. But for those people who do feel a moral obligation and a cause to get involved, what a wonderful thing to be able to sit down on your computer and say, look, you know what? I'm interested in mentoring youth. I'm not sure what to do. Let me Google that. Find out the 20 mentoring programs in my community. Go to a chat room for big brothers and big sisters and get involved. So
I guess you're still not getting the message.
I'm
basically saying that you have 1 million people on Twitter and I have 5,000. That's what I'm saying. So I have to knock it. No, we just have to make sure it's a means and not, I'm saying I'm proud of my 5,000. It's quality, Corey, it's not quantity.
But guys, on the flip side of Match.com, you have Ashley Madison, so people can hook up and have an affair. You know, life's short.
Wait a second.
That's their moment.
Really? Ashley Madison? I've never heard that. My staff take notes. What is Ashley Madison?
And Craigslist. They're actually out there marketing. Our company does not accept their advertising, but we've been pitched. We haven't decided, and they also tried to run ads during the Super Bowl, and Fox also
Who tried to run ads?
Ashley Madison.
What is
Life's short, have an affair.
Sure, Corey. What is
It's
Ashley
a
Madison?
website.
Yeah. What is Facebook, Corey?
It's a website for people who want to cheat on their spouses. And there's also the Second Life thing going on the internet. How many people are having virtual affairs and getting caught? Or perhaps they're reaching out through Facebook to old sweethearts. This is a big problem. It's not, so there's good and there's bad. I totally agree with you about social organization, but to your point, I do see a lot of teenagers sitting at home and they're IMing one another, they're not having a conversation. This whole panel is very eloquent, but I run into a lot of young people who don't know how to have a face-to-face conversation, and that worries me.
We're really facing the fact that the world has really changed. I mean, girls at the age of 13 taking naked pictures of themselves, not so uncommon. The world has really changed. When I was a kid, virginity was a serious word. Girls were supposed to be virgins at marriage. Now, that wasn't in a different, so much with the world. It was the late 20th century. I mean, how much have we changed since then? Now, when you talk about morality, how much has morality changed? You can't just pass it by as if it's a fixed phenomenon. It's not fixed. What's right today was not right fairly recently. So I think, Shmuley, you've got to sort of make a determination. Is there no absolutes in this world? Is it all relative? I don't think so. But
I'm the only father of 9 who's still a virgin. So, no, but Michael, it goes back to your point about values. Yes, times change, but values remain eternal. Now, you said something amazing. But you said something. There are 3 Jews on this panel. There's 2 non-Jews. Corey is like the official Jew of the American Jewish community, but he's a Baptist. And Lori, you are
Spiritual is the best way to describe it.
Okay. As opposed to religious, I get that, okay. But you said that Jewish values are the greatest collection of values the world has ever seen. Now that's interesting. I would say that Jewish values are the most relevant to our times, and the world has not had a chance to really hear them. I don't agree with you that the values that we see are Judeo-Christian values. I think largely they are our values of our Christian brothers and sisters. For example, abortion and gay marriage. How long are we going to talk about abortion and gay marriage? I mean, honestly, if I have one more conversation on the radio, on TV about gay marriage, I'm going to eat my yarmulke. I can't talk about this anymore. Heterosexual marriage is going to hell, to absolute hell. I'm a child of divorce. Everyone I know is divorced. The only reason I'm not, thank God, is I have a long-suffering wife. But all we talk about, whose fault is it? It's the 7% of the population who are gay. When the truth is, the only men who still want to get married in America are the gay men. So Michael.
So the point is, what's wrong with nothing?
What I'm saying is that we Jews would like to address the issue of family and community and not just talk about gay marriage. 2008, the United States nearly collapses its economy due to greed and materialism. And finally, those of us who care about values had a national platform to address a real national emergency. That insatiability was killing a $10 trillion economy. That we were really destroying a great nation through cars that were never new enough, and designers that were never fashionable enough, and homes that were never large enough. And you know how my Christian evangelical brothers and sisters responded? With another Proposition 8 in California to stop gay marriage. So there is no conversation about values, and that's why our society, in my opinion, is on decline. I want to be an optimist like Corey. For 20 years, he has tried to make me an optimist. And he doesn't even drink. That's what's amazing about it. I'm the one that drinks.
Let the gay people marry so they can be as miserable as the rest of us.
Let's take a second now. If anybody has a question for our panel, if you can look in your program, there are index cards. If you can just fill out a question, and then there will be ushers in the aisles collecting them.
I'm just curious, what are uniquely Jewish values? And I have to say that I am probably, of the non-Jews I've encountered in my life, one of the biggest proponents of the urgent need for Judaism to manifest this message externally. That Judaism is not an insular faith, that there needs to be the Jewish voice in this world. I'm curious about what you and Michael are talking about. What are the uniquely Jewish values?
Let me try. What I'm going to talk about are values that I sort of concocted myself. I think 300 years ago, Judaism changed. 300 years ago, Judaism changed with something called the Haskalah. And from that point on, secular Judaism began. And it was that moment from which all this extraordinary creativity and achievement became a theme in Judaism. And from that moment on, a lot of things have been very different. So with that as background, let me mention a Jewish value that I think basically began from that moment 300 years ago. I use the phrase struggling spirituality as opposed to the spirituality that we know more broadly as a spirituality looking at a God who's dressed in white with a long white beard and all that sort of stuff. That's not Judaism today. Judaism today is a Judaism of uncertainty, of having a God or a lack of a God that's good and that you love and that you hate and that you believe in or that you don't believe in. And at a point in your life you're a Jew-boo, and at another point in your life you're an atheist.
A Jew-boo?
A Jew-boo. You know that phrase?
No.
Jewish Buddhist.
Oh, Jewish Buddhist.
You're a Jew-boo, you're an atheist. You go through all sorts of struggles. You change your mind.
But Corey you're a non-Jew.
I've punched people for less. What would you call me?
But the real point is that Jews, in contrast, Christians and Muslims really are always uneasy and uncomfortable with their religious beliefs.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I'm sorry. So this
Your microphone there, Robert.
I'm sorry. So this is to me that this Judaism is a strange religion, and I'll tell you why it's wonderfully strange. It is not trying to proselytize. It's not trying to go out and convert people. The commandments, the essence of Judaism, if you look at Judaism as an Abrahamic faith that really spawned in time two other massive and also very beautiful faiths. But if you think about Judaism, there's so many moments that Judaism celebrates the imperfections of man. And it celebrates, because all the Jewish icons, from David to Abraham himself to Moses, were all incredibly imperfect people. But it also celebrates this idea that I am going to fight with my imperfections. I'm going to wrestle with the practical world to manifest the divine, and that even manifests justice. So if you take someone like Abraham, the chutzpah, the audacity of a Jewish icon to be one that argues with God. What religion do you see somebody looking at God and saying, God, how dare you try to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? Won't the God of justice show justice? Or there's a wonderful phrase in Hebrew when Moses comes down from the mountain and sees people sinning, and God says, okay, I'm going to destroy these people, you have people to leave. Here's Moses, this icon of the Old Testament, this icon of Judaism that turns to God and says, Macheni nami sifleka, if I'm pronouncing the Hebrew right, which is, if you destroy these people, erase me from your book. And the very word Israel comes from to wrestle with God. And so to me, I hear what you're saying, and I just don't have such a deeply pessimistic view of your own faith, and forgive me to be a proselytizer of Judaism. Hold on. To me, this idea that we live in this imperfect world, that we are imperfect beings, and that's nothing to as you often say, with popular culture, where we're trying to make us so perfect. I heard you give an eloquent, aggressive, offensive attack on even just plastic surgery, that we're searching for this unattainable perfection. The reality,
past Friday night when I spoke to you.
Yes, and so but the reality about Judaism, what's so wonderful about faith is that there is this idea that my job, my purpose is not perfection. I don't hold up these icons of Judaism as unattainable. My job as a Jew is to engage the world and fight with all of my essence to bring about tikkun olam, to heal the world. And to me, that is a value that's urgently needed. Now, I'll be honest, you and I have had this conversation many times. I see these bar mitzvahs now where people rent out the entire orange bowl and get yarmulkes with, with their favorite, Izod, whatever was designer label on them. And the Judaism becomes a reflection of the hideous aspects, to me, hideous aspects of our culture. And in that sense, the faith, I think, as Christianity has, as Islam often has, can get corrupted. But the essence of the ideal of Judaism, to me, is engagement in the world. It's not just we're going to protect ourselves. It's not a reaction to Holocaust or to pogroms. It is, as Isaiah called Jews, to be a light unto nations. But to me, this is the final thing to quote Golda Meir. It's also to understand that to bring about the Messianic era, to bring about the final fixing of the world, so to speak, Jews must be a part of the world. As Golda Meir said, Jews together are strong, but Jews with other people are invincible.
But Corey.
Hey, first of all, I hereby quit as a rabbi.
Do I have to grow a beard for crying out loud?
And Corey's the rabbi on the thing. I'm leaving. That was beautiful. I'm going. You got under Michael's skin because he doesn't believe in any of this stuff. You got under his skin.
Tell the truth, Michael. This is an atheist here that I'm trying to get to believe. Just yell out, amen, hallelujah, I see the light. So I'm trying to convert you into believing in God. The man who has done more to empower Judaism in this country, a man who professes to be a pessimist.
Not a pessimist, but an atheist.
The single greatest funder of Jewish education in America is an atheist.
First of all, I reject the term optimist. I am, like you are, a prisoner of hope. And optimism, no matter what they see optimism just as Pollyannish. The world is always bright and sunny. No, that's not true. Optimism is what has killed the truth of America. We have a difficult, parts of our history are irredeemable. We've done awful things. But a person who's a prisoner of hope still believes, despite the darkness, that we can find a way together to bring about the light.
I agree with that, but it doesn't mean that we have to do it using the biblical notion of God. That stuff sort of lost it for most Jews. Most Jews today, most living Jews, aren't believers in the way you speak. The great state of Israel that was born in 1948 is a great secular Jewish experiment.
Well, this is why blacks and Jews, I think, have a lot in common from our history perspective. It was Frederick Douglass that I prayed for years for my freedom, but I was still a slave. It wasn't until I prayed with my hands and my feet that I found my freedom. The African American, what fuels my Christianity is the black Christian experiences, the African American historical experience in America. And in many ways, they're similar to Judaism. That it is not about how loud you can preach, it's how great you can do. It's not about how much time you spend on your knees, it's how much time you spend engaging in the world with your hands.
No, that's a shared value, that it's the action that it counts. I want to be, first of all, I want to exclude Laura from this conversation. You've been around Jews long enough to participate fully here. But Michael, I wouldn't say the most Jews are protected.
So give her a chance.
Yes. I affirm your right to be heard. But by the way, I keep wanting to talk.
Talk about the struggle that women have just to be able to vote in this country. So
Yes.
I feel your pain.
Go ahead.
No, that's
Well, we got a few questions from the
Can I
audience.
just say one thing, Michael? I can't let that comment stand. And the majority of Jews have rejected the biblical notion of God. Let me just tell you.
So the first question was?
Well, right now we're debating whether we should go into a place like Libya. That comes from a biblical notion that you cannot stand idly by the blood of your neighbor. The God that reveals himself to Abraham and demands justice. The story of Passover, of a tyrant who tries to oppress his people, and how a redeemer comes along and liberates them. The United States is based on stories like these. Martin Luther King's last speech, April 4th, 1968, we commemorated his death just last week. The whole speech that he gave at Mason Street Temple, 23 hours before he was killed, was based on the story of Moses taking the Jews out of Egypt and saying that he wanted to see the promised land, that he would fail. I think these themes really resonate.
Why don't we go to the questions?
Another question. Okay. The first question we got was for Mayor Booker. It was a three-part question. One, are you single? The second question was, are you running for president? And the third question was, where did you learn to say "cha"?
So I can perhaps answer them all with one short story. So why do I know Shmuley so well? Because in 1992, we're coming up on our 20th anniversary. It was Simchas Torah, and I got invited to, by a woman, chasing after a woman, I got invited to have dinner with her. At the last second, she sent me a note telling me to meet her at the Oxford L'Chain Society. And I was asking everybody, what does L'Chain mean? And then somebody looked at me, Corey, and said the word's pronounced L'chaim. And I said, something caught in your throat. And they said, no, that's how you pronounce the word, L'chaim, to life. And I was like, okay, where is L'chaim Society? And they directed me to where it was. And amazingly, it really was, I think God works in wonderful ways. Here I am, this African-American Christian, in the bastion of Christianity. I'm walking past Corpus Christi, Christ Church, it's the name of the Christian colleges in Oxford, and I find in the middle of a maze of streets this place that says Oxford L'Chaim Society. And I go up and I knock on the door, and nobody really answers. And I open the door, and I just walk into a scene that there's only two sort of points of reference I had. One was in 92, many of you know the Crown riots were going on, and I see all these guys that look like they're straight from Crown Heights. And then the second thing, the only other reference I had was a movie I saw with my mom with Barbara Streisand called Yentl. And so I froze. It was one of those moments where sort of everybody stops and looks at me, and I thought for myself, oh my God, all these people are wondering what this large black man is doing here. And I was wondering, what's this large black man doing here? And one of the most beautiful spirits I've ever encountered in my life, who I didn't know at that point, but she's sitting, I think, somewhere in the audience, named Debbie Boteach, comes over to me and says, are you Cory Booker? And I'm like, yeah. And she goes, well, were you supposed to meet so-and-so? And I said, yes. And they said, well, they couldn't make it. And I said, okay, thank you, goodbye. And she stops me at the door and she says, excuse me, but wouldn't you like to join us? And I'm telling the truth now, and this is the problem with us as Americans, we hate leaving our comfort zones. I tried to think of a white lie and I didn't have one. And I don't double book my Friday night dates. That's probably my thing I am. So she ended up sitting in the only seat that was open around the banquet table, which is one that she had gotten out of, which was right next to Shmuley. And he and I, as you can see, are dramatically different people. I'm black, he's white, I'm 6'3", he's 5 foot and a smidgen. I'm very good looking. But amazingly, in one of those moments where you meet somebody and you just feel their spirit, and the word that I didn't know what it meant came to mind, B'Sheres. I just felt like a brother. So I ended up coming back to Friday night dinners, and we agreed, and this is such an important point, that we would exchange books, because to love someone is to know someone. And we decided to exchange books about each other's culture, and that's how I began studying Judaism, is because I would give him books by W.B. Du Bois. The first book I think I gave him was Malcolm X's autobiography, and he gave me books by Elie Wiesel, books about Maimonides. It was an amazing deepening of both of our loves. He became an addict, reading everything he could about Martin Luther King, as I was reading everything. But the long story short, getting back to my perpetual state of singlehood, was at the end of this experience, and this is where I'll end on the long answer to this question.
You were so traumatized being rejected that night.
Yes, yeah. So I spent most of my Friday nights hanging out at a place called the L'Chaim Society, which was the sort of the outgrowth of Chabad, with this amazing collection of Muslims, Christians, Jews. The grandson of the prophet of the Mormon Church, Ezra Benson's grandson, was a member of the Oxford L'Chaim Society. We just grew and grew and grew, with more and more people coming. I would bring friends of mine, Jewish friends of mine, who'd never even lit a Shabbat candle. I would bring them to, they said, you're going to a Shabbat dinner at the Chabad house? I said, yeah, come on. I'm just coming to see this, I can't believe this. So Shmuley eventually asked me to be president of the Oxford L'Chaim Society. I still to this day the only black Christian head of a Chabad house in the history of humankind. So the moment I want to mention is one of of my favorite moments of my time at Oxford, which is a testimony to, I think, what makes Shmuley special, one of the only things, is that we're sitting there. It's a final Purim party of my 2 years at Oxford, and Purim is, as you all know, a joyous occasion, but Purim with Shmuley is really a dangerous experience. Alcohol flows like the Mississippi River, and so at the end of the night, everybody is passed out, and we're in the bathroom growing up, except for 3 people. I don't drink, so I'm sitting sober. The grandson of the prophet of the Mormon Church does not drink. Shmuley did try, but he is sober as well. And the only person else sitting with us is Shmuley, who has the alcohol tolerance of a pregnant water buffalo. But this beautiful moment happens that I witnessed where this Mormon man, brilliant, beautiful guy, Mike Benson is his name, still one of your close friends, Shmuley, and still a friend of mine, turns to Shmuley and says, look, I've been coming to the Little Klein Society every Friday night and been experiencing this amazing, what Judaism I think should be, is something that joins us all together. And he said, by seeing how you are in your face with your Judaism, how you are proud of who you are, not in a way to judge or condemn that which is different than you, but by celebrating yourself and your culture and your ideals and being open to others, you actually liberate all of us to be who we are. And that is, to me, one of the greatest missions in life. All of us are born, as Lincoln said, we're in a moment of remembrance of Lincoln. He said everybody's born an original, but sadly most die copies. Shmuley is unapologetically unique. And then he said, you've made me, this is the words that shocked me, he said, you've made me a better Mormon. And Shmuley said, look, I've read your Book of Mormon. You've shared your culture. You've shown me the best of your ideals and your values, not through your preaching, but through how you live. And your courage to live your truth unapologetically and consistently and in an indomitable will, you have made me a better Jew. And it was amazing to witness, but I couldn't be left out. So I turned to Shmuley and I said, look, hanging out with you every Friday night for the last 2 years and spending so much of my time with you and your family, I tell you, it's done nothing for my love life. So I am single. I am running for my life.
You've already been president.
I've been president. I'm already president of my society. That might be my great claim to fame and my epitaph. The truth of the matter is this friendship, and it's because of Shmuley that I met the gentleman to my left, who's been a tremendous friend. But to me, this real spirit, and my mom gets on me all the time because I talk about gay marriage. I refuse to marry people as mayor, which I have the power to marry people. And I told my mom, until I'm not going to marry anybody for the reason why I think that number one, it should be done in a religious or spiritual or more purposeful context, depending on what your background is. And number two, until same-sex couples can marry, I don't want to be involved in doing that. And my mom listened to this. I hear my mom just sounding impressed. I go, what's wrong, Mom? She goes, I don't want you to marry people. I just want you to marry, please. You're 40 years old. So anyway, that's my answer.
Okay, thank you. This question goes to Lori. We've been discussing the old oligarchs of ABC, CBS, NBC. How should we think about rising oligarchic power of Facebook, Google, Twitter, and their power to censor or to shape speech?
Believe it or not, we have this conversation all the time. I have a foot in both worlds as part of the old media or traditional media, and now we're making the transition along with many of our colleagues. We have a Facebook fan page, we use Twitter. We're online now with WABCradio.com, which actually has more users than most radio stations. And what it's done is it's turned us into a global radio station as opposed to a radio station that you can only access in New York City. How is it changing? Wow. You're seeing interesting partnerships with YouTube. Will there be a day when we aren't watching the major news networks, but we're just going to YouTube? I would say it's happening. My kids never watch NBC News or CBS News. They're on YouTube, and they're actually using YouTube more and more as Google, whereas that's their first source of let's Google a particular subject and see what type of video pops up. So we're becoming more of a video-driven society as well. I like the fact that media is less concentrated. Frankly, as Mayor Booker was saying earlier, it's hard to get a message across, and the media is tightly controlled by just a few corporations. So I appreciate the more populist angle, the grassroots approach, and look, at the end of the day, we say in our business, content is king. Whoever has the best content, whether it's on radio, television, or Facebook, is going to win. So that's how we see ourselves. We're much more than a radio station. We're a brand, which is 77 WABC.
This question is for Shmuley. And Shmuley, I'm going to read this question to you and ask whether you want to answer the question or to comment on the question.
Yes.
Here's how the question reads. I guess the first part is addressed to me. Please be a man and ask this question.
As opposed to being a woman.
I resent that.
Well, here I am, a man. The question reads, WABC has demonized African Americans for more than 3 decades, such as host Bob Grant calling Martin Luther King a scumbag. Would Rabbi Shmuley share the stage with the program director of a station that is, how's this read here?
Demonized.
Demonized.
Scott.
That's it.
Okay.
Demonized Jews.
Hang on.
You didn't finish the question.
Just 1 second. The
Is
question.
that your question, by the way?
And my question was...
Scott, you're supposed to be anonymous in these questions.
My question was actually...
This is the new age of exhibitionism, you see.
My question was actually addressed to Cory Booker and Michael Steinhardt. I'm not sure why it was addressed.
Okay, well, let me answer the question.
Let me just finish the point of the question. If there was a station that spent 30 years demonizing Jews, suggesting that they should be machine gunned down, suggesting that they were subhuman, suggesting that they should be shot, that they should be killed, like many of the hosts at ABC do, especially Bob Grant, the most racist host ever, who was brought back under Lori a couple of years ago.
Can I answer?
Would Michael Steinhardt and Cory Booker share the stage with the program director of a station that went after Jews like that for 30 years, and would you say nothing about it?
Okay, let me answer. Thank you, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend Scott Pellegrino, who also comes to our house and shops us a great deal. So let me just answer this.
And those are great spots, you guys can imagine that.
I've attended one also.
But I hope you guys answer the question too. But go ahead.
Okay, Scott. Thank you very much. God bless you, Scott. Scott Pellegrino and I met when I had the phenomenal honor of becoming the first ever white radio host in America's most prestigious black radio station, 1600 AM WWRL. I was the morning host for a year with my brother and friend, Peter Noel. And it showed phenomenal open-mindedness on the part of the African American radio station to have a white radio, white Jewish Orthodox host. And I loved that station, and only because Peter Noel left to go back to the Village Voice where he was writing their cover stories did I leave as well, because we were that close. And Cory knows the special nature of our friendship. I love reaching across and discovering a common humanity. Mayor Cory Booker was the best president we ever had at Oxford. He brought more Jewish students to discover their tradition than probably any other Jewish student in the 11 years that I spent at Oxford. He was revered by the students, and we all knew that he was going to do great things. Even though he was African American and Baptist, he had no interest in becoming Jewish, of course, but that didn't mean he couldn't learn from it, just as I had no interest in becoming a Christian, but I could learn a great deal from it. WABC has many different voices. That doesn't mean that any program director is going to endorse the views of them all.
They're all racist.
You have to
That's not true.
You have to let me speak! Scott! Scott, this isn't a conversation, because you're interrupting. You're being disrespectful. So let me just say, Lori Cantillo was chosen by Oprah Winfrey to be the program director of Oprah and Friends. And I will say, I'm not a liar. When I speak from the heart, I speak from the heart. And I'm speaking to you from the heart. I have rarely met anyone who is as honorable and as special a human being as Lori is. And I saw her experience professional challenges that would have made people angry and bitter, and I've never seen anyone handle them with such humanity and dignity as you did. And I told you that many times, so you have the wrong impression of this incredible woman. As far as Bob Grant is concerned, and Lori had blacks and Jews and...
I hired Shmuley and Oprah.
She did. And Mehmet Oz, who is Muslim and he's America's greatest doctor, she put together that incredible cast. Maya Angelou, the great poet. She put them all together at Oprah and Friends. And
Would you
one of the
hire
great years of my life.
anti-Semitic?
Let me just finally say, I like some of what Bob Brandt says. It is true, however, that I did hear him disparage Martin Luther King once. Let me just say, Martin Luther King, and I think he did it, 1 second, Scott. I think he did it many years ago, but I'm not Bob Brandt. What I will say is, as a white Orthodox Jew, I will say on the record right now, that Martin Luther King was the greatest American of the 20th century. He restored America to its founding ideals. And that's the way it is. And you know what, Scott? I love you, and you're a good man, but you're sometimes a little bit too strident. God bless you, and let's go. Move on. Thank you very much.
Go on to the next.
If they had anti-Semitic hosts, what would you do? Would you still be on the stage?
Has he said anything about...
They're saying that Jews were subhuman and would still be on the stage.
I'm just curious if you've heard anything that he said since I came to WABC, because I have not.
You don't listen to the show?
I do listen to the show.
You don't know Bob Grant's reputation?
I know of his reputation. So do I decide who is appropriate? Is there a panel that decides who we put on the air and who we do not put on the air?
Why is it always racist? Why
Okay, I think we're gonna move on to the next question.
You know what I said about Martin?
Conversation about tone in America. This is exactly
you hire
Scott, you asked your question. Come on, thank you.
Can Corbin sign our answer to?
We're going to have to call security. Okay, next question. This is a question for Mr. Steinheim. On the one hand, from different addresses that you've given, you praise the Orthodox for some things.
I praise him.
The Orthodox? Oh, you forgot what we're called? Okay.
But on the other hand, you announced publicly that you are an atheist. How do you explain that?
It's not very difficult to explain.
That might have been my question. That might have been my question.
Not difficult to explain. I do praise, I admire the Orthodox in the sense that they have a certain simplicity in their faith. And faith is very appealing if one has it. I don't have it. I think most Jews, alas, don't have it. So I admire the ability to have that faith and live by that faith. But in the 21st century, particularly in light of some of the events in the 20th century, it really strains credulity to continue to have that faith. I don't have it. But I do on one level, admire those who can continue to live with that faith. I'm not sure that's a totally satisfactory answer to you, but that's why on the one hand, I admire them. On the other hand, I find their faithlessness, their sinning, more annoying than the sins of the rest of us. But I, broadly speaking, admire their ability to live with faith.
Last question for Mayor Booker. I'm inspired by the work that you've done in Newark. Where does the future of community organizing lie? What kinds of programs have you initiated in Newark which you think can be brought into other parts of the country? And lastly, how can I get a job with you?
Is
that a volunteer or
I don't know. Mr. Steinhardt will pay your salary. You can come work with me tomorrow. My city has terrible budget problems.
Glad you volunteered for that.
Yes. And if you're single, you probably, look, the beauty of Newark right now is that the community is really making a tremendous change in dramatic ways. And there are so many areas in which we're doing things, to me, that are models for the rest of the country and innovations that are truly extraordinary. Look, one of my biggest frustrations with our nation is we profess to be the land of the free, but yet we lock up more human beings than any nation on the planet, probably about 20% of the imprisoned population on Earth. exists within the United States of America. And we create this system in which people who leave imprisonment slide right back in because we insist on shutting doors to them and creating an almost impossibility or a very difficult path for them to liberate any kind of economic potential. And this freezes long-standing disparities, poverty lines, racial lines. You know, New Jersey, this great progressive blue state supposedly, has about 13% African Americans, but over 60% of the prison population is African American. So we saw this as a ridiculous reality. Those of us who hate government spending, why don't we all attack this together and realize that we right now we're spending so much more on the back end, 10, 20 times as much than on the front end. And this is the issue of uniting people. And to Scott's comment and others, one of our partners is somebody that is the Manhattan Institute, for example. They're a right-leaning organization that we could have sat and had a line between us and just argued about the things that they might have said in the past, or the author of the bell curve and all this stuff we can talk about. But we instantly, what I prefer to do is find out what are our commonalities. Manhattan Institute joined us with some other people, just try to make Newark a model for reentry. And we created some pretty astounding programs in our city that have gotten a lot of national attention that can't be replicated, from bringing all the law firms of our city together to create the nation's first pro bono legal service project, where guys coming out, men and women coming out of prison can avail themselves of legal support to untangle a lot of the ridiculous administrative law problems that they encounter, or a fatherhood program, because the kids most likely to go to prison in America are children of incarcerated adults. We have a fatherhood program that we get guys mentor fathers, group activities, parental classes, group activities with their kids. Long story short, this program, now running for 4 years, has a 3% recidivism rate, even though the national recidivism rate in the state of New Jersey is over 60%. So, we're really trying to find very pragmatic solutions that belie the unbelievable distracting political debates that we have in America that are more about pulling left and right than are about moving our nation forward.
Well, how do you do that? So someone comes out of prison. I salute this, and Corey really is the best in the country at doing this.
And I know you're inquiry about this, it's just your concerns that you might one day be arrested. Go ahead.
you mean you heard? But how do you do that? Because someone comes out of prison, and he applies for a job. And as soon as an employer hears that they were in prison, they're going to be weary, suspicious. So how do you attack that recidivism rate? How do you ensure that people are open? And because what we all agree is that the prison system probably doesn't reform people, because it doesn't.
The correctional system doesn't work. Look, we are going to have to, and I'm
you get people to trust them. What do you do?
Well, I want to even go deeper than that. This is my prediction for the big innovation for policing in the 90s. Was this CompStat that actually New York now, that literally all across the globe, there are cities that are copying it. But if you talk to anybody in New York, especially African Americans living in certain neighborhoods, they're going to talk to you about feeling like you live in a police state. You're constantly being stopped, you're constantly being frisked. When I was a young African American going to school at Stanford, I was pulled over, accused of stealing the car, dragged out of my car, laying face down on the pavement. It's these experiences that really just create such anger and enmity. And they've created a sense where community is actually being undermined, that the strength of neighborhoods are being undermined. And this combines with a lot of other problems that we have in America that we have not lived up to. There is a carnage of human potential going on in the United States of America that is so offensive to the values that we say. Our children say in routine every day those 5 words that are so compelling to me: liberty and justice for all, when they pledge allegiance to the flag. But what are we doing pragmatically to make real on that promise? So to get even deeper into your question, there's going to be a powerful change in the entire criminal justice system. I see it coming. At John Jay College here in New York, there's an amazing guy named David Kennedy who's starting to say, look, unless we start dealing with issues of racial reconciliation within communities, unless we start dealing with issues of stopping this relationship between police, where I've sat with heads of FBI, I've sat with heads of federal agencies, state agencies, and they all look at me and say, we're not solving any problems here. In fact, we're often just perpetuating problems by just arresting more and more often young African American men. So what we're trying to do in Newark is try to get out of this terrible trap that America's stuck in, where the prison populations just keep growing. We in New Jersey spend billions of dollars a year incarcerating people, and that means taking the entire criminal justice system and transforming it. So on the front end, we're about to pilot something with David Kennedy where we actually do the same kind of research we do when we do do drug interdiction, which is looking at all the people involved in a drug trade. We're actually, instead of arresting them all, like we did recently to end drug dealing in some high-rises, we're actually calling them into a public meeting, not with police officers talking to them, but community leaders saying, first and foremost, we love you. You are not some alien invaders. You're not, you know, we often look down on people and say you're bad as opposed to recognizing that we share a responsibility. We may not be to blame for the crime that you've done, but we share a responsibility in the outcome. And what
If you want to make money, could you have an alternative?
No, but that's exactly the point. We're far more rational economic actors than we think. And while there are people in every sector of our society, there are politicians that belong in jail, there are there are people in the finance world that belong in jail, there are people in inner city communities that belong in jail. It's a small fraction of us, and unfortunately, yeah, you do need a society that has a place, but most people are far more rational in their choices than you know. And if you take away their ability to get jobs, gainful employment, if you create an economy that suppresses people's ability to feed their families. This is the same thing. Why are these Somali pirates? Do people actually really know what's at the core of that? Because they're fisheries. Many of these were fishing villages that had been raided by corporate fishing companies that literally depleted those stocks and drove many of those folks having no hope for themselves economically into doing these extreme things. We need to take responsibility. So just to clean up, because I know it's getting late, but to make my point is, so we've begun to look at how can you create a criminal justice system that reflects our values and does not reflect this terrible trap that we're in. And the way you do it, Julie, you're right, is finding ways to empower people to make different economic choices. Now, you hold them accountable. If you don't choose A, B, and C, then there's going to be a real consequence. But if you do, then we're going to be, as a community, supporting you. And by the way, supporting you is a far less expensive thing to do than leaving you on your own and continuing blaming you for the mistakes that you make.
Corey, it's not just a political solution, though. I mean, a lot of this has to do with family. A lot of this has to do with parents raising kids with values to make better choices. Like, one of the things that you're facing in Newark is the breakdown of families. I mean, you have...
First of all, I would say it's not just...
President Obama is speaking about this.
It's everywhere. But let me get another point. So if you put a single mother in a situation where she has to work 2 jobs just to make, in the state of New Jersey, just to make meet the minimum basic needs of a family, you need to make twice the minimum wage because the cost of living is so high and obviously growing higher. So if you put a single mother in a situation where she can't afford housing and is stuck in communal environments often are not supportive. If she has to work 2 jobs, so she can't be there to check homework or cook the healthy dinner that we all say that you should be eating. And by the way, if she wants to cook the healthy dinner, she can't find a supermarket within miles of them. So we continue to heap blame about, oh, you're being a bad mother, bad mother, bad mother, and that's not going to solve this problem.
I think she's an amazing mother. I was raised by a single mother. By the way,
right.
that's Michael's point. Michael said at the beginning, it's not about race anymore. You said it's about socioeconomic difference. Clearly, we elected a black president. I don't think America is institutionally racist. I think it has to do with economic differences today.
Well, it's really, you know, as I listen to you speak, Corey, there's a certain sense of deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. I mean, I'm 70 years old, and my entire life I've heard talk about the overwhelming black prison population and about the problems of black families. And frankly, I've also heard talk by wonderful progressive politicians about ideas to change it. And it seems that not much has changed. Not much has changed from the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. And somehow the prison population remains overwhelmingly, disproportionately black. And the social problems remain overwhelmingly, disproportionately black. And at the same time, things have changed. There's much more racial integration. There's, you know, the idea of interracial marriages has dramatically changed. But somehow I don't quite grasp why, with all sorts of innovative ideas, and your idea is innovative, but I think you have to acknowledge there have been innovative ideas in this respect for a long time now, and yet it doesn't seem to change very much. What am I missing?
Well, no, this is a great point. Let me just finish this. I cannot let this passionate full of integrity, but yet terrible pessimism to go unchallenged. So this is I feel the same way, and I didn't get into politics to talk about problems and have the same conversation I had back 15 years ago when I was on a college campus. My dream and goal is to create real, substantive, tangible examples of what is possible. And so you're right. If we were just talking about things in the abstract, nothing is going to change. But when you look at things like our fatherhood program in New York that has saved the state of New Jersey millions of dollars, driven down recidivism rates, these are the things that we hope that will ultimately change the larger policy of a country. But if you aren't willing to take small acts and create real substantive change, and you just surrender to what is, as opposed to stop dreaming. And I challenge you, and you've been a friend for a long time, I can show you 3 points of light in Newark that are real programs that we are now trying to bring to scale that can change the way we're doing things as we know it. And you know this, there was a time in New York that people said the city is ungovernable, the city is bankrupt, crime is, well, you wouldn't feel safe standing in Central Park when the sun started going down. And you've seen miracles in your eyes. We are a nation that there were people, because of their stubborn hope, unyielding love, relentless faith, who never gave up on seeing what was. And this is what has helped crush Jim Crow. This is what helped gain women's rights. This is what's helped communities change. And I'll give you my last sort of example that I just talked about with, this was on the show that I was on earlier today. You know, when I moved to New York, I was a Yale law student and encountered this woman who was about your age. And she had lived through horrible challenges by staying the tenant president of these buildings for 40 years. Her son was murdered in the buildings. And when I showed up on her doorstep, I said to her, I'm from Yale Law School, I'm here to make a change, I want to help you out. She says, you want to help me? I said, yeah, I want you to help me. Yeah, I want to help you. And she said, well, follow me. And she drags me into Martin Luther King Boulevard in front of the buildings where she is. And she said, well, describe to me what you see around you. And I said, what do you mean? She was, describe what you see. And I described crack house, drug dealing, problems like that. And the more I talked, the more this woman just shook her head in disgust. And when I finally stopped, I said, what's wrong? She goes, you can't help me. And she started walking away. And I ran after her, grabbed her from behind. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, son, you need to understand something. That the world you see outside of you will always be a reflection of what you have inside of you. And if you see just the problems, darkness, and despair, it's all there's ever going to be. But if every time you open your eyes stubbornly, you see faith, hope, opportunity, or possibility, then you can be someone else making a change. Now you are a guy who's made a living seeing things that aren't there, seeing where the opportunities lie, seeing the way to make one investment and make it leverage something larger. That kind of ingenious, if we start to bring it to our public sphere, we are going to create the same kind of revolutions. And the history of America, at the end of James Baldwin's book, The Fire Next Time, he says, human history is a perpetual testimony to the achievement of the impossible. We have no right, therefore, to stop believing that impossible things can be achieved. And so my dream, and I know the only threat to us, and this is a spiritual thing, the real threat to us as a people is not the problems, not that we don't have solutions and ways of dealing with them. The real threat for us is people who have that toxic sense of resignation that we can't do anything. It's so debilitating of an attitude. It is so undermines our ability to actually engage in this world and remake it in the image, as I would say, in the image of God, in the image of our higher self and our greatest aspirations. And I'll just finish with this. Look, there's so many heroes in my city who have not given up, who see things that aren't there. And my favorite story is the guy that just, a man your age, retired from, and he, like you, wanted to be a philanthropist, retired from a state worker. And he lived in a neighborhood that was unsafe. Drug lot across the street from overgrown weeds to booze, drug dealers hanging out. And he decided to be a philanthropist. And he got his chance to be a philanthropist, but he got a stimulus check in the mail. And this guy went out and got a lawnmower from Home Depot, goes into this lot, small acts of kindness. We don't need to change the world. Just mow the lot. And a few days later comes out, he kept working this lot to turn it from debris, refuse, overgrown weeds into a beautiful lawn. And before you knew it, it was such a great place to play for kids to go. The drug dealers left the neighborhood, and it transformed the whole spirit of his community through his philanthropy, through his small acts of kindness. And the challenge for all of us who don't like the world that we see, and this is where I'll end, is not to resign ourselves, not to relent, not to give in, we wouldn't be here. We drink deeply from wells of freedom and liberty that we did not dig. We eat lavishly from banquet tables prepared for us by our ancestors. And we have a choice. We can go drunk on the wine of other people's struggle and sacrifice, or we can say, you know what, I'm going to let myself metabolize all the blessings I've been given and use them, no matter how dark the night, use them to kindle a flame of goodness out there in the world. This to me is the calling of my faith and my history. This to me is the calling of Judaism. This to me is the necessary, urgently needed spirit. And the only thing necessary for for evil to be triumphant is for good people to do nothing. And we have got to stop doing nothing and engage in a spirit of hope and justice and, most importantly, action.
I wanted to thank our distinguished panelists. I wanted to thank also Dr. Lenore Rubin, who's sponsored tonight as part of the Selma Rubin Distinguished Lecture Series. I also wanted to really thank Rabbi Shmuley Boteach and his team really for pulling together the panelists and
to give you 60 seconds on a watch. After that ending with Corey, which was a profound articulation of Jewish values, Michael, because it's the Jews who said that one day the wolf would lie with the lamb, and men would beat their swords into plowshares, and we would no longer teach our children the art of war against all of the evidence to the contrary of man's belligerent nature. We'd all live together in harmony and peace, and Corey articulated very beautifully. I'm not leaving this stage until Michael does the way, okay? I want to see some great statement of optimism. Corey, I mean, you can't get him to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the second we have partnered with the Bronfman Center here at NYU. I want to thank all the students very much for coming. Lenore, thank you very much for sponsoring this evening in your mother's memory, and in your memory, continue to be a great blessing to you. God bless you. Thank you. 10 months ago, less, 7 months ago, I had a debate right here with Christopher Hitchens on the Afterlife. We had a tornado that night. I think it's the same tornado that's hitting tonight. So thank you all very much for braving that kind of weather and still coming out. You've had the opportunity tonight to hear on a panel from Michael Steiner, who's the founder of hedge funds and the world's most famous Jewish philanthropist. Mayor Cory Booker, regarded by many, including myself, as America's most successful and visionary mayor. Lori Cantillo, America's highest-ranking female talk radio executive, and America's best-looking rabbi, with the sole exception of Rabbi Yehuda Sarna, who, I mean, come on, this guy belongs in movies, okay? Rabbi Sarna, thank you for, as always, being a phenomenal scholar. If you want to know more about this book of Jewish values and ever, please see me or any of our staff. We have books to sell. God bless you. Thank you for coming.
Raise money for cancer or forming support groups for anorexia. I mean, there's amazing things happen that are just inspiring to the spirit, that people that would not have found each other. In fact, in many ways, find that kind of substantive connection through these social media platforms before we were much